One of the most profound things I've learned in my life is that it's actually not about my hair at all. I've spent a lifetime trying to cover up who I am. And as much as I love a good external transformation, and I do, I much more love a heart transformation. Join me as I share how I work to heal my heart, find happiness, and embrace our hair. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 2 of It's Not About Your Hair, where we talk all things hair, heart, and happiness. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Casey Voss. On the first episode, or the introduction, I didn't really introduce myself. I kind of rambled on because that was my first one. So let me take a little bit of time. If you're new, if you don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Casey Voss. I am a mother of 3 daughters, Sydney, who is almost 23 years old and a social worker. Sophie, who's 18 and in beauty school, so fun. And Sadie James, who is 13 and in 8th grade, and she is the baby and she is a little bit salty. So I am also married to Adam Voss, who we have been, I say high school sweethearts, but we've been dating on and off since 8th grade and had our first baby at 19. And have overcome 1,000,001 hurdles in our marriage. And he is also a barber, which is super fun. So we share the love of this industry, and we share a passion for raising a family, for healing, for recovery, for transformation. And I also love Jesus. So will this podcast be about Jesus? Not necessarily, but I think it's through the lens of healing and acceptance and trust that we begin to understand how to actually heal from the inside out. So by day, I'm going to be your girl. You got curly hair. You want to learn how to master that curly hair. You have some image issues around that hair. Boy, I can help you with that too. But while we're here in this special space together, we're going to definitely be talking about how to find refreshment and how to heal from the things in our life that have hurt us, and how to forgive ourselves for hurting others. And only through this wholehearted approach to ourselves, our whole human approach, have I found this super amazing spot where I believe that my life matters. And I think that there's a lot of people living out there, you guys, who don't believe that their life matters. And if you're listening to this or watching this, and you have at any point wondered if your life matters, it sure the heck does. It sure the heck does. And if you're so busy scrolling social media, which is probably how you're going to find this, but there's a temptation to try and measure up as we're looking at what other people are accomplishing or doing. And I think we're living in a really unique time in history where we have access to so many people, but we're lacking genuine, authentic relationships, vulnerability, transparency. And that's what I'm here for. I plan on sharing with you guys way too much personal information about my life, because somehow I think that's what I'm gifted to do. And I hope to have a few guests on here from time to time, some clients that have really inspired me with sharing their authentic life with me. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things. Today, I wanted to share a little bit about why I feel like this podcast is important, in hopes that you stick around. So I shared in our introduction that I have spent my whole life trying to hide my curly hair until very recently. And this is the coolest thing about God or your creator, whatever you choose to believe, is that my greatest strength was once my biggest weakness. Please catch what I'm laying down. I have been a salon owner for 23 years, I think. 23 years, since I was 20 years old. I didn't start embracing my curly hair till about 10 years ago. So the first half of my career, I was blowing everyone's hair out straight. And there's nothing wrong with blowing your hair out straight. So let's catch what I'm laying down here. I am never here to shame any part of your journey, whether it's your hair story or your history. I'm here to only offer enlightenment as God has enlightened me, or opportunities to bump into, as we said in the first episode, lenses, glasses, perspective, opportunity to bump into these things, the way that we see ourselves that perhaps might not be the truth, and give us time to reflect, pause, appreciate where we've been. And so in saying that, I think that living life with these lenses on has blocked me from being able to see my true power. So I had a successful salon for many years. And in that successful salon, I never did curly hair for many years. And that is okay. But what I realized is that it always felt like work. It was hard. And I needed all those lessons of my past and all of the experiences I've had from owning a salon to struggling with my identity behind the chair. Was I a good enough hairdresser? And this could be leaned into any career, whether you're a hairstylist or not. The first half of my adult life, spending it trying to measure up to someone else's measuring stick and pretending that I had it all figured out, and falling apart every time something didn't go as planned. And that's what we're here for, you guys, because how much of your goddamn life isn't going as planned? And if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, my life is gone as planned, I'm not here to poop on your parade, but that is not going to go well for you, because eventually at some point in our lives, things don't go the way we have planned. And here's the secret. I think that's where the magic is at. Okay? The magic is at how do we handle life when we have to stop, drop, and roll? What happens to our perspective when we have to readjust? So again, back to the original, I have ADD. You're going to notice it a lot in this podcast. A rabbit trail to one to another, but my greatest weakness became my superpower. So when I finally started looking at curly hair, it didn't happen until my oldest daughter, she's in this picture with the red, cute curly hair, started having curly hair herself, that I started to wonder, maybe curly hair wasn't bad because her hair wasn't bad. But guess how I looked at her? I didn't look at her with these lenses in which I looked at myself. You're bad, you're a mess, how come you're always messing things up? Which is how we tend to attach these value systems or worthiness to ourselves. I looked at her like a mom looks at a kid, like, how come you're so awesome? How come your hair is so awesome? How come you're so cool? And it allowed me a fresh look into hair, which is really quite fascinating, because the first half of my life in hairdressing, all I wanted to do was eradicate curly red hair. I wanted to make everything as blonde as possible and as straight as possible, and I was pretty good at it. But I had no control over the universe, so if it rained, I was in trouble because my hair got frizzy. When my roots grew out, they were going to be gold, red, whatever they wanted to be, and I had no control over that. And so my whole life, I felt like all I was doing was trying to fix something I thought was broken. And when I finally started to embrace my curly hair, something magical happened inside of me. It made me start wondering if maybe it hadn't been broken all along. And I started playing around with my own hair and discovering that maybe my hair wasn't bad. And through doing that, it made me question everything I had thought about all the lies I had been telling myself about curly hair, never growing, curly hair, always breaking, curly hair, always being frizzy. And maybe none of those things were true. And if they weren't true, but I'd been telling myself and all of my clients that it was true, that curly hair doesn't grow, that curly hair is a hard time coloring. And this podcast isn't about curly hair, but it is, because it's about, again, these lenses on which we see ourselves. So if I had to confront these things that I'd been telling myself were the truth and realize that they just weren't true, how much of my life had I been living like that, you guys? How much of our lives have we been beating the same drum, the same reality, the same version of what we think the truth is, And because we've done it for so long, we're having a really hard time shifting out of that perspective. And only when we're really, really willing to say, oh my gosh, I think that wasn't true. It's like bumping into, again, I'm going to put on these glasses if you're listening and not watching. It's like for the first time bumping into the corner of your lenses and realizing, God dang it, I have glasses on. I didn't realize it. And once I take these off, all of a sudden I can see things differently. So once I started to embrace my hair, guess what I started realizing? How many of my clients had textured hair? Not only that, how many of my clients were also living in this altered reality, this altered state of their existence being a mess or broken or something that needed to be fixed. And would I perhaps have the ability to help people to embrace what they've been given? And so, Voss the Curl Boss was born. And many other reasons. I closed my salon, went in on my own, started really focusing on curly hair. And we're going to get into all of these intricacies about the how, the why, and the where through this podcast, because what I'm going to share with you guys is in 2018, I felt called to write this timeline of my life. So I made a timeline, good, bad, any memory I could think of, from as long as I could think back, and put that on this timeline. I don't know why I did it. I felt like I should. So I did that, tabled it for a while. And then out of that, I felt all of a sudden one day called to write a book. I didn't know I was writing a book, but I felt like a prompting to turn each one of those memories into a story. And I just committed to that. And with ADD, as you can tell, I've been all over the board since we started this 10 minutes ago. I just committed to getting up every morning at 5:30 and writing for 45 minutes. And I would write on one of those sections on that timeline. And what I realized is how many memories I stuffed deep down inside. And not only good and bad memories, but how each one of those really huge moments in my life that I remembered enough to put on a timeline began to shape and mold who I would become. It was through writing that I was able to continue to work through, and listen to me closely on this, you guys. I had already been in therapy for about 10 or 12 years at this time to work through a lot of my icky past, which again, we're going to talk about here because I think it's super important. And so I had already done the work. But it was still very hard to go back to some of these memories of things that had happened to me, or things that I had done to others, or just ways that I had walked through life believing lies about myself, and write them down. And not only through writing them, I felt a healing, but I also felt a breaking off or a renewing of my mind, an opportunity to go back in and say something different to the younger version of myself, to go back in and kind of myth bust some of these things like, yeah, maybe your hair isn't frizzy. And you guys, if you've just been saying your whole life that your hair is frizzy, it's kind of hard to quit saying it when all of a sudden you realize it's not true. It was just misunderstood. And the same for myself. So to be able to go back in and rescue the younger version of me, and to be able to pour in truth, light, and perhaps a fresh perspective on a young girl who didn't know what she didn't know. And then I never published the book because I got in my own way, but that's what this is. We're going to go through the book together. We're going to talk about how to rework some of the things we've thought about ourselves, and how to get over our hair so we can get into our heart and create and cultivate the happiness that we want for our lives. So, I'm excited. So that's episode 2, you guys. And I'm going to end every episode by telling you that it's okay if you're not fine, but you are going to be just fine. And your hair looks great, and you're doing a super job. So keep it up. Thanks for tuning in. And if you want to hear more about my muddled, miffled, and super crazy life, stick around for another episode. I guess this is where I ask you to subscribe to my channel, to follow me on social, and to listen wherever podcasts can be found. And join me every Tuesday at 2 as we unpack how to heal your hair, your heart, and your happiness.